Assalamualaikum, Dr. Ashikin and my fellow classmates. So today our group will present about the analysis of the company, and we have choose Faridah Maju Holding Syndrome Berhad as our group analysis. So first thing first, these are our group members, which consists of Wan Atika binti Wan Jamarul Imran, Nurul Faiza binti Ahmad Anwar, Nur Aina Husna binti Muhammad, and Nur Shafira binti Razli. So for the presentation, we will discuss three main topics, which involve business practices exercised by the Faridah Maju Holding Syndrome Berhad, the comparison between the Faridah Maju and Kamda, and also the recommendation to overcome their issues. So I will briefly explain the background of the Faridah Maju Holding Syndrome Berhad. Okay, so Faridah Maju Holding Syndrome Berhad is a professional corporate uniform provider that has its own product in manufacturing and supplying school uniforms. Faridah Maju Holding Syndrome Berhad supply high quality corporate uniform and apparel, including but not limited to t-shirts, windbreakers, caps, and souvenirs. Moreover, they are also specialized in producing and supplying comfortable and easy iron school and curriculum uniform, which are variety in colors and size. Faridah Maju Holding was incorporated in 2002 as trading business that provide embroidery and alteration services. In 2004, the company became franchisor in supplying school uniform and services for 3 outlets in Selangor and has established their own brand known as Counselor, which is well known in the Klang Valley. So the concept of counselor is memahami keperluan dan keselesaan pengguna berpakaian, which means to cater and understand the need, use, and luxury of uniform requirements. So today, the headquarter and factory of Faridah Maju Holdings are located in Shah Alam with 6 outlets in the vicinity of Selangor. So these are the news article regarding Faridah Maju Holding Syndrome Berhad. You can see here. Okay, next we will move on the business practices by the company. So the core value practices practiced by the Faridah Maju are responsibility, integrity, ownership, and also teamwork. So firstly, responsibility values means the ability to recognize, interpret, and act upon multiple principles and values according to the standard within a given field. Thus, in order to feel the sense of responsibility, the employer and employees were provided with a guideline on rules and regulations. Moreover, for employees displaying a good attitude and support by following the company's rules and regulations, they will be rewarded like allowance, bonus. So next is the employees fulfill their duties properly and stay on top of the commitment to gain the company's trust. And if there is any misconduct or violation against the company rules, the management team will take immediate action by conducting an investigation in the existence of the sufficient evidence. So next, in regards of the integrity values, the employees display a strong moral code that guide in performing their work, regardless who is watching. So moreover, the company have sent some of their employees to seminar in order to build their ethical integrity at the workplace, and they were advised to teach their co-workers on what they learned on from the seminar. So to ensure and employees are able to adhere to the company's policy, the employer does a briefing on the do's and don'ts and provides some basic rules and regulations which are stated in the employee contract agreement, and the company also practice effective communication to avoid any misunderstanding between the both parties. All right, so next one is ownership. So the third core of is ownership. That means an employee taking initiative, coming out with his or her own idea and stating that the employee will accomplish a particular goal. So for instance, the company emphasize on the value of ownership to allow their employees feel and think that they are part of the company, which in turn motivate them in performing well. So like in fact, this will make the company easy to achieve their targeted objective. In the company, the ownership practices that being implemented in the employees is the employees display their effort in completing the task at hand before the deadline given by the employees. And to help the company overcome several issues, the employees are encouraged to share ideas and opinions during their discussion or meeting. And the last core value is teamwork. So in the Faridah Maju Holistic Neighborhood, the ethical practices that were exercised is the upper management are encouraged to provide guidelines and support towards their subordinate. Then the company's policy highlight the importance of communication across the company, since Faridah Maju only has less than 35 employees. And lastly, if there is any employee who is on leave, another employee will support during his or her absence in case of the emergency. So by practicing the teamwork culture, it can break down the boundaries between the team, which guide decision making and improve the workflow of the for overall. So I think that's all from me. I will pass floor to the Shafira. Thank you.
Thank you, Aina Husna. So now we move on to the next part, which is the unethical practices conducted by FMH, in which it involves several problems. The first one regarding the thief and investment problem, in which some of the FMH workers has been involved in stealing money from cash drawer and to some of the office supplies home without permission. And this is made due to the lack of segregations of duty, whereby one employee has been given more than one job and lack of supervision has been imposed to that individual. So when we interview Ms. Ain about this, she said that when there is a report received regarding a thief or investment problem, what the company usually do is that they will first perform an investigation, and then next they will try to solve it internally, or they will involve police by making reports. The second one is misappropriation of asset, whereby some of the employees are using company vehicle for personal use, and there are also some of them that steal some product stored in the inventory. And this is made due to the poor inventory system implemented by the Faridah Maju Holding, in which currently for their inventory system, they use manually, partially manual, and partially system. And next is attitude and other problems, whereby involving backbiting the manager or co-worker in their absence, showing up late to work even after receiving a reminder from the managers, or even falsifying their overtime sheet. And lastly, FMH also has been involved in several cases related to Jabatan Tenaga Kerja, and this involving a hiring minor. Next is a breach of trust. This is a very serious cases which involving a board of the director that leads to a police investigation, whereby the board of director misuse of company money without discussion and permission from other board members. There's also an element of favoritism, in which FMH is a family business, as most of their management positions are acquired by close members, and they hold a major power and influence in the decision-making process. For example, a close member has become one of the franchise for councillor product and he has been given a higher maximum amount of credit compared to others. So because of this, some of the employee might fear to ask for that person to repay back their debt owed towards the company. And last but not least is higher staff turnover rate, in which most of the FMH employees only work with the company for less than 2 years, which may lead to the either poor hiring decisions or bad management. This issue highlighted the lack of loyalty, which resulted FMH to suffer some financials and time, because when they hire a new employees, they need to train them and provide all the knowledge. And then when they just left for within 1 year, then FMH need to hire new employees to replace them, and then they need to retrain that new employees. Right. So now we move on to the corporate governance. Whereby this is the FMH organization structure. The first one, we have the board of directors, which consists of Faridah bin Jaafar and Razli bin Talib. So these two individuals is a married couple, and currently Razi bin Talib hold 70% of the shareholders, while Faridah bin Jaafar hold 30%. And under the board of directors, we have manufacturing and operating departments, HR and finance department, purchasing department, sales and marketing departments, and outlet and franchise. So as for your information, Mr. Abdul Rahim and also Mrs. Ain is close family members with the board of directors. Right, so now we move on to the board leadership and effectiveness. Since FMH is a private company, so they don't provide further disclosures or additional information to external users about the board responsibility. So with that, we use Company X to understand what are the responsibility of those private limited companies. In which, according to Section 213 of the Company Act 2016, it provides that the director must at all times exercise their power for a proper purpose and in good faith in the best interest of the company and exercise reasonable care, skill, and diligence. And Section 214 of the Company Act also provides that the director who makes a business judgment is deemed to meet the requirement of his duty as a director if he make the business judgment for a proper purpose in a good faith, does not have a material personal interest in subject matter of the business judgment, is informed about the subject matter of the business judgment to the extent that he reasonably believes to be appropriate under the circumstances, and lastly, reasonably believe that the business judgment is in the best interest of the company rather than personal interest. So now about regarding the remuneration, we also based on the Company Act under Section 230, Section 2, it stated that in the case of private companies, the board may, subjected to the Constitution, approve the fee of the directors and benefit payables to them, including any compensation for loss of employment. Further, in Section 233, stipulate that an approval by the board made under Section 232 shall be recorded in the minute of meetings, and the board shall notify the shareholders of the approval of the fee within 14 days from the date of the approval. In the case of Faridah Maju Holdings Berhad, the company has set a fixed amount for each director remuneration, and some of the directors' personal expenses has been paid by the companies with the approval received from both shareholders. So now we move on to the relations with shareholders, whereby the first one focus on customer itself. So for MH is dedicated to provide the best product and service to the customer, in which one of their company mission is to offer the best price and quality that meet customer satisfaction levels and produce a high quality of product using high quality fabric and comfortable custom-made design that fulfill the design specification. So before FMH decided to build their own factory, they started a business in trading, and then from that they received some feedback, and they believe that in order for them to provide a better services, a better quality of product, they need to produce it themselves. So that's why they started from a trading company into a manufacturing company. So next, they also encourage employees to ask feedback from customer, whereby some of the customer who came to the shop and made a complaint or feedback about their product, they will collect all the data, all the information, and inform the upper management about it, and those information will be used to further future product development. And next, regarding the supplier, whereby maintain a good supply relationship through the repayments of debt on time. And also they show their support to local business through purchasing all of the raw materials locally and perform an inspection when receive a goods from supplier to maintain high quality of products. And lastly, they provide a two-way communication with all the suppliers to build trust and long-term relationship. Next, we move on to the last point, which is the local authority/organization, whereby FMH adhere to the requirements set by the local authority regarding uniform specification, whereby they listen to any news, any update or news reported by the government. For example, I think last year, the government has announced that they allowed other students to wear black shoes, right? So from that information received, what FMH has done is that they stopped purchasing white shoes, and buy and sell more black shoes. And it's not just about taking the information for their own benefit, but it's also for their customer. Because by listening to all the news and updates issued by the government, they will use it and inform to the customer, because some of the customer came and then they don't even they don't even know about that, doesn't even hit the news. For example, like they ask what are the specifications for certain curriculum uniform. So with that it's important for FMH employees to educate themselves in order for them to deliver the information to their customer. And last but not least, they also support a charity event or programs conducted by any organizations, including NGO. So for this matter, there are several CSR or programs that have been conducted by FMH, including they help Zakat to provide school uniform for selected students. And also recently they involved in making PPE for the frontliners. Yeah. So that's all from me. I pass down to Wan Atika. Thank you.
Thank you, Shafira and Aina, for the wonderful explanation of FMH operations. So I will proceed with the next part, comparison analysis, Kamda Group Berhad. Since FMH is a private company, we compared their ethical culture and corporate governance to a similar clothing business listed on Bursa Malaysia. We selected Kamda Group Berhad because it also produces school uniforms for consumers. So let us begin with the background of Kamda. It was established in 1972 and has since dominated the garment and textile departmental store industry. Kamda is rather a well-known brand due to its extensive range and quality of garment and textile products. If I mention Kamda to any one of you, you would recognize the brand right away. This shows that it has created a brand recognition towards consumers all over Malaysia. Kamda specializes in textile fabric, furnishing fabric, and many more. Their logo reflects the adoption of an environmentally aware, clean, fresh, and new image. As you can see on the left side of the slide, the logo has a distinctive typeface and turquoise with black corporate colors. Moving on to the next slide, I will discuss the ethical culture of Kamda briefly. So Kamda has a code of ethics that is separated from the company's policy. The core values that are nurtured among employees are honesty, integrity, fairness, respect, and compliance. If you go through their codes, you can see that the company strictly prohibits the act of bribery to reflect their compliance with the rules and regulations. Other than that, employees are to be treated equally and with respect, indicating that discrimination is prohibited. By promoting such behavior, a healthy work culture can be created among employees. So there are a few practices that are adopted by Kamda's employees to reflect their compliance with high ethical standards when dealing with the business. You can read through this on your own. Okay, so if you see the right part of the slide, we've included the company's whistleblowing policy in our analysis. So whistleblowing policy is relevant to encourage the reporting of any misconduct, malpractice, or irregularities that is in violation of the code of ethics. So I will not elaborate on this policy because I'm sure you are aware of its purpose. Next, how does FMH culture differs from Kamda? This is like FMH weaknesses if compared to Kamda. So firstly, FMH does not have a fixed and proper company policy. When we did our interview with the managing director, she said that the main reference for the company's policy is the Bursa Malaysia website, as well as the Companies Act 2016. Basically, this is their main reference ever since its establishment. However, the policy, particularly the ethical policy, is constantly undergoing changes based on the policies of other companies within the same industry. The reason for this is to regularly update the policies according to the current business environment, culture, and regulations, because we know that the change in environment requires a more comprehensive policy that could cater to the current needs and demands. Secondly, FMH put less emphasis on ethical values because, as we can see, there is no separate code of ethics to provide detailed guidance for employees in terms of ethical conduct. The ethical policy is embedded in the company's main policy, thus the policy could not focus on only one specific area. FMH policy mainly covers the employee's term of employment. There is no prohibition of any suspicious acts such as bribery and illegal intelligence gathering. Because of the lack of coverage of the company's ethical policy, most problems are associated with the employee's lack of professional ethics in the workplace. Although the company's ethical values are clearly highlighted, outlined in the policy, but that is all. There is no emphasis on the employee's conduct in the workplace. Next, the absence of the whistleblowing policy in FMH leads to less reporting of misconducts or possible conflicts. Whistleblowing policy is needed for employees to report misconduct in a company, but with the absence of it, no proper procedures are outlined to report misconduct, such as the reporting channel or the guarantee of whistleblowers being protected. This is very important for them because they fear getting discriminated against or dismissed due to the act of whistleblowing. Plus, the investigation of misconduct is carried out only in the presence of sufficient evidence. Absolute proof is difficult to obtain. So rather than having proof to start the investigation, the management must also take into account the intention of the whistleblowers. Now, moving on to the corporate governance of COMDA, which is divided into 3 principles. First principle is the board leadership and effectiveness. Second principle is the audit committee and risk management. And lastly, integrity in corporate reporting and relationship with stakeholders. You can read the details in the company's CG report or on the slides. So how does FMH CG differ from that of COMDA? Basically, FMH is a family business. Thus, leadership issues associated with the board of directors are very common. Firstly, FMH board composition consists of only family members. So imagine if family conflicts were to occur, the effect may be detrimental to the company's performance. Although this shows unprofessionalism in the workplace, it is not unusual considering that FMH is mainly operated by family members. Plus, there is a possibility of the BOD putting more emphasis on family priorities rather than the company as a whole. For example, if any of the family members were to commit bribery, there is a risk of cover-up of possible misconduct because family relationships are very important to them. They will put the priorities of maintaining good family relationships above the priorities of the company. Next, as mentioned by Shafira earlier, the company paid for the director's personal expenses. Although this is not illegal, it is a bad practice that may lead to future problems such as tax deduction issues and will promote unprofessional behavior of the directors. The second issue is the absence of an audit committee. Well, for this part, private businesses are not mandated to have an audit committee, but since the directors are mandated to pay income tax, there is a concern of tax evasion. The last CG issue is on the lack of accountability towards other stakeholders. From the earlier slides, we know that FMH is very participative in promoting social sustainability. However, there is no emphasis on environmental sustainability. Although FMH production is not severely damaging the environment, it is considered as one of the stakeholders, and engaging in good environmental practices can contribute to the achievement of SDGs. Furthermore, employees' welfare is less concentrated in terms of their health and safety, as well as training programs to enhance their skills. Aina did mention that the company sent their employees to a seminar on professional ethics, but there are none in other functional areas of the business, such as team building programs. Lastly, is on the conduct of general meetings. So apparently, private businesses are not mandated to conduct general meetings like the public listed companies do. But with the absence of it, conflicts may persist among family members working within the company. Therefore, FMH must take proper consideration of this issue because it may affect the overall performance of the company. So that is all for my part on the comparison analysis. I will pass the next part, which is the last part, to Faridah. Thank you.
Thank you, Wan. I will now proceed to our last section, which is on recommendation. From the detailed description and analysis by my team member, we would like to recommend a few practical steps for FMH to overcome such issues. The flow will be divided into 2 in terms of ethics as well as corporate governance. So let's move on to the first on ethics. The first and important one would be to develop a code and make ethical performance a strategic priority. An applicable code of ethics, conduct, or similar policy that establishes clear objectives, norms, and expectations is a critical necessity for ethical performance. A code must be accompanied by a focus on ethical performance in a larger decision making. FMH needs to make a clear and concise code in order to build a strong, sustainable, and growing company that sets a high priority on ethical performance. However, a merely adopt corporate ethics program will not effectively combat unethical activities. That's what happened to Wells Fargo and Volkswagen. It's just a paper syndrome. Wells Fargo and Volkswagen both overlooked the fundamental principle that code of ethics is just a piece of paper stored away unless it is transformed into a living document that directs all operation and decision making. Therefore, an effective, well-written code of ethics clarifies an organization's mission, values, and principles, defines behavior, provide an ethical foundation for all decisions, specify shared ideals that underpin strategic planning as well as the ethical goals that must be met, and serve as compliance, marketing, and risk mitigation. Needless to say, the most important thing is to know where the company stands. Code of conduct, ethics training, rules and regulations are not particularly helpful when it comes to dealing with ethical dilemmas and issues. FMH needs to identify what really matters to them and to the organization. In order to be ready to challenge the business unwritten norms, FMH must first learn to recognize and respond to the subtle indication about what the company genuinely values. This may include compensation scheme, meritocracy system, and how employees feel about the company. If necessary, FMH can enforce rules and regulation within the company whenever there is a breach of code. This is to create awareness that FMH is taking serious note on the implementation of the code and policy. Plus, this ensures that every employee of FMH know, understand, and adopt the code. Second, we have to set the tone from the top. Senior management teams of FMH must demonstrate leadership and demonstrate that they are living the company's ethical ideals, although they are a family business. Only after that the staff will be able to work together that guarantee the company as a whole live those principles. Creating and maintaining the right tone at the top is the bedrock of the robust ethics and compliance program, while it sets an organization guiding values and ethical climate. There are four critical steps. Conveys expectation to staff, set a good example, create a secure process for reporting infraction, and reward integrity. Leaders who inspire the majority of the corporation's employee in the rightness of ethical action, get momentum in developing an ethically based culture, and have a foundation upon which to grow. If you have an honest CEO who makes it clear that he or she wants an employee to act honestly, it lays a groundwork for an open and honest community. The next we have is to engage, communicate, and train employees. Engage staff and other stakeholders through effective and informative communication. Good, regular, and consistent communication and training will help to embed a ethical culture. FMH standard beliefs and expectations must be communicated in intangible terms that all employees can comprehend and that are clearly related to their day-to-day job activities. Corporate ethics training should not be given in intention of changing employees' ideas, attitudes, and habits, but rather to provide a platform for assessing, evaluating, and evaluating the repercussions and advantages of ethical decisions. Corporations should encourage employees to improve their ethical competence, and incentives should be provided to generate material for communicating ethical ideals, particularly on a personal level. Therefore, personal ethics education at a corporate level targets individual weak links, individuals who receive little or no personal ethics education as children, and effectively fills the hole in their ethics education, contributing to an enhanced firms as well as strengthened society. The next recommendation is to provide support routes for employees, which is also important because employees must have the confidence in their ability to report violation and understand the process of it. FMH may establish clear reporting channels for suspected fraud and violation of business standards on ethical behavior. Too many organizations are lacking in this area and must have a zero tolerance policy. FMH needs to establish whistleblowing policy and practices where it needs to properly outline the process, safeguard whistleblowers' identity, follow up, review, evaluate, to ensure that uh, the policy is still effective and no adjustment are needed. FMI should also consider implementing effective whistleblowing hotlines as part of their corporate compliance process so that employees are motivated to report suspected unethical or illegal behavior internally. This will give the company to address and correct the behavior or activity before it becomes illegal. Lastly, on ethics is to measure effectiveness of companies' ethics program. FMH must monitor their ethical performance as well as to stimulate open conversation in order to ensure best practices. When evaluating the effectiveness of a compliance and ethics program, there are three areas to be considered. The first one is ethics program design, the implementation of the program, as well as the impacts it brings. It is vital that effectiveness measurements encompass both the overall program and each individual components of the program. Measuring effectiveness is qualitative as well as quantitative effort, where the metrics or components measure distinct features and each is valuable on its own. Let us move on to recommendation on corporate governance. So the first one we have is to redefine corporate governance. Because of its connotation of its formality and the concept of governance can be scary to the owners and managers of private companies. The act of decision making is the heart of corporate governance in private companies. So, according to Matt Fulbrook, he said that corporate governance exists without any formal structure or deliberate intention. As long as decision is made, governance is there. So, making a good governance is part of the good governance. Good business outcome is driven by a good decision. So, based on the research done by KPMG in the early 2020, they found that there are diversity of governance model in every private company, and most private companies deliberately mirroring public listed company approaches to governance. So there is an initiative by KPMG where they launch a family business dynamic assessment. It's an online evaluation to assess business families, discover insight that will help them to grow. It is a free tool where they can analyze their capabilities in 6 important areas, including governance. The next one we have here is to appoint audit committee. Incorporating an audit committee into a company can help it demonstrate a transparency, ethical behavior, and good business management. Whatever the goals are, an independent and continuous assessment of the company's health will always be necessary. So evidence shows that it improve a rigor of governance measure, protect current and future growth, as well as to foster transparency through independence. And lastly, it is on incorporating CSR. As we mentioned earlier in our previous presentation, CSR is not just for PLC. In fact, according to research done by University of Michigan, private corporations are more likely than public corporations to follow through on corporate social responsibility declaration. CSR has been proposed to lead to mutually beneficial long-term and trustworthy relationship with stakeholders. On the management side, implementing CSR initiative by the company itself may prevent more stringent governance restriction from having a negative impact on production, as these laws would increase economic expenses and limit managerial decision-making freedom. That's all from our group. I hope you guys enjoy listening to this. Thank you so much for listening. Bye bye.